Welcome everyone. There's a lot of you are joining us now. I'll just wait a few more moments while Zoom lets everyone in. My name is Sarah Jo. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at the LGBTIQ Legal Service, which is a health justice partnership between St Kilda Legal Service and Thorne Harbour Health. We're here today to launch our legal needs analysis. It's reflecting on the work we've been doing and recommending what's needed to meet legal need for the LGBTIQ community in the future. Today we will have two Auslan interpreters, Brooke and Chelsea, and they will about every 15 to 20 minutes they'll change over one to it's like swapping translation, swapping their screens, the videos, and you can also pin their video if you need. First up, we'll have a few speakers, and then following that there will be a panel discussion, and I will introduce everyone then. Yeah, I think Annie, over to you. Sorry, this is Annie Davis, the Executive Officer and Principal Lawyer at St Kilda Legal Service.
Thank you, Sarah Jo, and if I can begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which St Kilda Legal Service operates, the Yalukit Willam clan of the Boonwurrung people, and to acknowledge the Boonwurrung and Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners of the land in which our catchment area is situated. And in doing so, we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and any elders who may be among us online today, and to acknowledge this land is Aboriginal land and that sovereignty was never ceded. So welcome and thank you all for attending, and for each of our speakers and panellists today, and a very special thanks to the Victoria Law Foundation for hosting and coordinating this event as an online event. And yeah, without whom none of what we've achieved through the LGBTIQ Legal Service with the seed funding they provided to us 2 years ago would have been possible. So it's almost routine and sort of cliched to say that, you know, these are extremely difficult and challenging times, but it's just so heartwarming to see so many of you attending this event today to show your support and your interest in the work that the LGBTIQ Legal Service has been doing, despite, you know, all the difficulties you're no doubt facing at this time. Look, thinking back to the last moments of, you know, life as we knew it before COVID lockdown began back in March was about when we were bringing together all we'd learned about legal need for this report. That included what we learned from our clients and what we learned from Thorne Harbour Health as our health justice partner, and what we've learned from so many other organisations and community members we've had the great privilege to work alongside throughout the course of this 2-year pilot project. So it was very clear at that point, and indeed, you know, from very early on in commencing this project, that the level and complexity of legal need within and across LGBTIQ communities is, to put it, you know, quite simply, just enormous. While we had some idea that there was a significant level of legal need out there in the community when we started 2 years ago, I'm not sure we comprehended how enormous and complex that need was. To take us back to where the idea for this service and this project began, St Kilda Legal Service, we've been a community legal centre operating for almost 50 years now, and we were one of the early adopters of an outreach model back in the 1990s, where we sent lawyers out into the community, and we had the hope that we would reach more people who experiencing extreme disadvantage and who might not have the trust or the confidence to call our office and make an appointment or to come and see us as a legal service. And it was through this approach that we began to build more trust and more understanding, and we came to see more clients from the LGBTIQ communities who lived, worked and accessed services in our local area, and from the trans and gender diverse community in particular. And we became more aware of the specific legal issues these communities and clients faced, and also the extra layers of disadvantage and barriers when trying to resolve much the same legal issues as many other communities experience, such as tenancy, social security, reporting crimes against them or family violence. And this was often due to a sense and often sadly direct personal experience of having a legal professional or a police officer or a court or tribunal or other agent of the justice system not understand where they were coming from, sometimes at best, and sometimes at worst, actively discriminating against them or causing them further harm. So in reaching out to Thorne Harbour Health, who were then the Victorian AIDS Council as a well-known and respected service in our local area, we found they shared similar concerns about the specific legal needs of LGBTIQ clients and communities in our catchment. And so we partnered with them to successfully bid to the Victoria Law Foundation for a grant to establish the LGBTIQ Legal Service as a health justice partnership and two-year pilot project, commencing in 2018. So the objectives of this project were threefold. One was to provide specialist and inclusive legal services for LGBTIQ communities as an integrated health justice model. The second was to provide an inclusive practice toolkit to support legal professionals and the broader legal service sector in providing inclusive and culturally safe services to LGBTIQ clients and communities. And I think many of you would have attended that event that we held earlier in the year to launch that kit. And the third and final, which is where we're at today, is to produce a legal needs analysis documenting what we'd learned throughout the course of the project about LGBTIQ community legal need. So that is what we're celebrating today, and the report is now published and available online at the LGBTIQ Legal Service website, and I think hopefully we can share the link in the chat if we haven't already, but no need to sort of burrow down into it for now, as Sam Elkin and Hannah Sycamore, our two project staff, will be talking you through that report in a moment. But the report shares some really compelling stories that our clients have been generous enough to share with us for the report that really illustrate the particular legal needs they've experienced and the barriers that they've faced. And look, there's also some really positive stories in there and hopeful stories that show the value and the difference that a specialist service like ours can make. But some statistics that I found really striking and interesting were that, over 80% of the clients who came to us for help reported that they also experienced a mental health issue at the time they reached out to our service, and that 15% were either experiencing or at risk of homelessness. We carried out surveys as part of the legal needs analysis during midsummer and through other channels, and over 30% of respondents said that they'd experienced a discrimination law issue within the previous 5 years. And concerningly, about 35% of those who responded said that they would not feel confident reporting a crime committed against them to their local police station. But yes, look, Sam and Hannah will speak to it in more detail, but it really is just a fantastic report. And I'd like to really thank and acknowledge the staff members who have driven this project, in Sam and Hannah, and for their incredibly hard work in putting this project together. They've been very modest and mindful, I think, in the report in acknowledging that, there were limitations in what we could learn and what we could cover in this report based on our clients' experiences. And there were many other issues or aspects of legal need that we, could not explore in further detail due to the limitations of our resources. But I can tell you they couldn't have worked any harder with what they've pulled together. And as well, if I could take this opportunity to thank other members of the LGBTIQ legal service staff and volunteer team. They've been the ones, at the front line responding to intake queries and working with clients and providing all the advice and the casework that's informed this report. So that's Sarah Jo, who's hosting today, and our lawyers, Alexandra Partington, Nathan Jung, and also a volunteer recently on staff with us, Brooke Collins. I would like to thank Thorne Harbour Health and particularly Simon, who will be speaking in a moment, as our health justice partner, for their incredible support through this project and their contribution to this actual report and bringing it all together. We've learned so much from you over the past 2 years. Transgender Victoria, we'd also like to thank, and who we partner with for the Roberta Perkins Law Project, a specialist legal service for trans and gender diverse community. And thank you TGV for your input into this report. There were so many other organisations and individuals that we reached out to for input and guidance in putting this report together, and we can't thank you enough for your time. We're conscious that many of you do this work as volunteers, and we really do thank you for taking that time that was often unpaid to provide us with that guidance and support. K&L Gates, if we can thank again for their pro bono support throughout many aspects of this project, and their excellent graphic design team who pulled together the format for this report. It looks beautiful. Further thanks are also due to the Equality Branch of the Department of Premier and Cabinet, and it was through a funding grant from them that we received last year that we could engage additional staff to put this report together and drive our legal service delivery. You know, these things were really such a huge undertaking, and it was clear we needed more resources to do these tasks justice. And as well, these funds enabled us to launch the LGBTIQ Legal Service website, where you can find this report and many other legal information resources, professional support resources, and a way for community members to contact us directly online for free legal help. If I can also take the opportunity to thank the Federation of Community Legal Centres and other providers out there of LGBTIQ focused or specific legal service programs, including Victorian Legal Service, ASRC and HALC, for their support with this report, and also with working with us and clients we've referred on to them, and working with them so collaboratively and effectively. Thank you to Victoria Legal Aid, who recently confirmed that they were allowing us to retain and refocus some of our family violence funding into the next financial year to continue family violence service provision through the LGBTIQ Legal Service. And as you'll see in the report, that was quite a big area of legal need that we encountered. And a further and very big thanks are in order. As you'll hear from our recommendations with the report, a key theme was the need for greater funding for specialist services, and including the establishment of a permanent and specialist statewide LGBTIQ legal service. As many of you working closely with us know, our seed funding for this service from the Victoria Law Foundation and an anonymous donor was about to come to an end mid-year. So we faced the very stark reality that from July, we would need to radically scale back the services we could offer through our health justice partnership with Thorne Harbour Health, and also effectively no longer be able to respond to the many inquiries we get from around the state through the LGBTIQ Legal Service website. So it was to our great relief and excitement, we received a letter from the Attorney General's office a few weeks back to confirm St Kilda Legal Service has the funding to continue to provide these key services, as well as other parts of our legal service programs, to support us in response to the COVID pandemic as part of a 2-year funding package. So we're very fortunate today to have the Honourable Martin Foley here in attendance, so we can thank him personally for the Victorian Government's support as not only Minister for Equality, but also a local member and long-time supporter of St Kilda Legal Service and our work. So thank you so much, Martin, for joining us today and for saying a few words.
Thank you very much, Annie, and it is I who should be thanking the LGBTIQ Legal Service and St Kilda Legal Service for all of its work, not just the LGBTIQ service over the last few years with all that support that you pointed at, but St Kilda Legal Service has been at the absolute heart and soul of what the community legal service model around justice, advocacy, and using the law as a tool for change. It is governments who should be thanking you. Like you, can I also acknowledge that we're meeting on various lands of First Peoples, like you on the land of the Boonwurrung and the Yallock people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging of that community, and any other elders of other First Peoples who might be on us on this Zoom with us. And I do so in this particular context with both an LGBTIQ and a legal frame, noting that it's our Indigenous community that can teach us so much in not just terms of what notions of justice and fairness mean, but equally what notions of gender, identity and sexuality mean. and the learnings that can come from that through reconciliation and treaties will have a big impact, and I'm sure will have a big impact on the kind of work that you're all here to particularly mark with the LGBTIQ Legal Needs Analysis report. So I thank Sarah Jo for her and the other people's work on that report. And can I thank Brooke and Chelsea for their Auslan interpreting. I should also give a special shout out to both the Law Foundation, Lynn Holtain as the Executive Director, and Simon from Thorne Harbour Health, who've been much more than just the health justice partner for this project. Thorne Harbour Health, as we know, are the preeminent health advocacy leadership organisation in LGBTIQ community in Victoria for many, many years, even allowing for their change of name in more recent times. But the work that Thorne Harbour Health and its predecessors have done over many, many years, I'm not in the least bit surprised to see Simon and the team at the heart of this important project. Of course, this is a very important project, continuing that tradition of how the law can be seen as a two-edged sword when it comes to many communities on the margins of the legal system and the social system, and particularly the LGBTIQ community. What this report demonstrates is really the breadth of the legal needs that cover our LGBTIQ Victorians. In many ways, this doesn't really come as a surprise, we have to say, because communities who experience discrimination, communities that experience the rough end of that justice system are always looking for ways and means to organise and to respond. It was devastating to learn that about half of the trans and gender diverse people have reported discrimination or abuse, along with a third of lesbian, gay and bisexual women and men. We know that something like 34% of LGBTIQ Victorians still feel the need to hide their sexual orientation or gender identity when they are accessing services of any type, at work, at social events, or simply when they're going about their daily lives. And this discrimination, or just being in a state of constant anticipation of it, is clearly unacceptable. And it has dire consequences, putting LGBTIQ people at the increased risk of both physical and mental health challenges, let alone the real outcomes of discrimination and structural inequities that are rained upon them. That's why we can point over the last few years to some substantial progress in this space. And I'll just go through a few, and whether it's some of the legislation around trans and gender diverse peoples for birth certificates, removing the criminalisation of aspects of being particularly HIV positive in some areas, whether it's fixing outdated laws for testing for HIV, whether it's some of the adoption equality measures that remove the discrimination against same-sex or gender diverse families from building families, or a number of other methods that have, from a programmatic system, attacked the issue of the inbuilt discrimination and stacking of the deck against LGBTIQ Victorians seeking their rights as citizens to equality. There's still more to do. There's still substantial work in the Equal Opportunity Act, and there's still, through the whole of government strategy, that the aforementioned Jenny pointed to groups that in the Department of Premier and Cabinet are leading on a whole of government strategy for LGBTIQ equality. There are extensive consultations underway in that right now, and I would encourage anyone who hasn't yet had the opportunity to look at some really important work around research in this space, around what still needs to be done, what has been done, and how community needs to lead that process of change. Just to go to engage.vic.gov.au and have your say. There's still stakeholder consultations with community groups and organisations, but individuals or organisations should feel free to pursue their particular approach to these issues on that engage.vic.gov website. We know that that will come about August the 3rd, give us a whole heap of extra information and data that we need to build a whole of community response to the challenges of equality in Victoria's Society for LGBTIQ communities. And the more that participate, the stronger the government's data and responses will be. But while we're doing that, we also need to realise that there's a real world that St Kilda Legal Service and its many allies operate in, particularly in this hugely challenging COVID-19 crisis. That's why, as you've already indicated, in May, we announced $17.5 million for extra funding for the community legal services to respond in these really challenging times. And just over $500,000 of that investment will go to St Kilda Legal Service and its partners over the next 2 years in recognition of the specialist support that is needed to provide the LGBTIQ communities who, as your report today shows, are at risk of increased legal needs, not just due to their status as overly marginalised communities in the Victorian society, but with those issues being amplified by the current COVID-19 crisis and restrictions. We really appreciate the way the service has maintained support in some pretty trying circumstances for LGBTIQ communities in this difficult time. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the staff and all of their volunteers for the commitment and their hard work in this challenging time. Can I take this an opportunity to wish you well at the LGBTIQ Legal Service. All the work that you've done is much appreciated. I'm sure, like you, we share the values in the space of it, using the double edge of the law to both protect and to advocate for change, so as to make sure that real equality is achieved here in Victoria. And until that is achieved, none of us can afford to stop. And of course, I really do look forward to the opportunity of coming through this terrible crisis that we're in at the moment, and perhaps even one day coming down to the centre again and seeing how in the real world the LGBTIQ legal project is going. So can I thank you very much again. I wish you all well, and I wish the important work that the report today points to is rolled out by St Kilda and its allies over.
Thank you, Minister Foley. Next, I will invite to speak is Lynn Holtain. Lynn is the Executive Director of Victoria Law Foundation, who funded the Health Justice Partnership and have been providing wonderful support to the team during the COVID-19 pandemic, helping us run these online events, and also promoting the work that we do, and also the work that other community legal centres also do in improving access to justice for the LGBTIQ community and other marginalised groups as well. Lynn Holtain, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah Jo, and I just had to click the right button so that all the systems worked. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you so much for the invitation to be part of today, and congratulations to SKLS and the LGBTIQ Legal Service on the final piece of the work that has been funded through the initial grant that, as Annie pointed out, we gave 2 years ago for the establishment of the service. The legal needs analysis is the very final bit, and it provides profound insights into the people that you need to reach, what their issues are, and how best to help them. And I look forward to hearing more from Hannah and Sam a little bit later about the outcomes from the work. The Victoria Law Foundation has only very recently started to undertake its own research projects. And I've got to tell you that we are deeply involved with legal needs analysis. Love it to bits, because it provides such powerful insights into the sort of justice that Victorians deserve. So we are particularly pleased that this is the final piece in the puzzle for us. Before I give you a bit of a sketch of why the LGBTIQ service was so important to us, I too would like to echo my profound thanks to the Bunurong people on whose land I live, and thank them profoundly for their custody of this land over the last 60-odd thousand years. It's an incredible contribution that they have made to our well-being. And at times like this, when we spend more time wandering our suburbs and our neighbourhoods, you become all the more, I think, powerfully aware of the landscape and how critical it is to our well-being. The VLF has been around for 53 years. So way back when, it was decided that making decent grants was a really important part of our function. And we've been really committed to access to justice through all that time. And some of our grants have played very critical roles in establishing key organisations which are now part of the landscape, if you like, of Victorian law. And I'm thinking of organisations like the Mental Health Legal Centre, Environmental Justice Australia, the Human Rights Law Centre. We seed funded all of those organisations over the last 30 years or so. So making timely investments into really outstanding initiatives which support better legal access for Victorians is part of the VLF's DNA. So when we got that application a couple of years ago from the SKLS for the LGBTIQ service, it just struck the most powerful chord in us. When I read that application, I thought, this is it. I can't tell you how delighted and proud we are to have been able to fund the service in its first 2 years. Also, totally thrilled that it's got further funding now, and that it too has the opportunity to move into the mainstream and to become, like the Mental Health Legal Centre and the Human Rights Law Centre, part of the furniture of the legal community in Victoria. It's critical that that be the case. So that's, I think, the trajectory that we aim for. Spotting great ideas whose time has come, giving them reasonable funding to get off the ground, and then hoping and doing all we can to support their transition into mainstream service, because that's an important role that we can play as seed funders. So congratulations once again to all involved with the service, both the LGBTIQ service and the SKLS. It's been a joy to be part of this, and I thoroughly enjoy coming along. And like Martin, I can't wait to actually see the thing in operation in the Pride Centre when we can finally creep out of our burrows. So thank you, Sarah Jo, for the invitation to be part of this, and to Annie and Sam and Hannah for all your work. It's a joy to be here.
Thank you, Lynn. I've been with the service for the last 9 months, and it has been challenging and rewarding, and it's an amazing feeling being able to do the work that we do and knowing that it will have a profound impact on the community. Next, I would like to invite to speak Sam Elkin and Hannah Sycamore. Sam Elkin is the first of the outreach lawyers with the LGBTIQ Legal Service. They are the coordinating lawyer for the LGBTIQ Legal Service and the Roberta Perkins Law Project, which is a specialist trans and gender diverse legal service that we run in partnership with Transgender Victoria. And Hannah Sycamore is one of our project officers and has been really instrumental in writing and preparing for this report. Hannah, Sam.
Thanks, Sarah Jo. And I'd like to pay my respects to the Wiradjuri and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation as well. Pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. So yeah, to everybody who's joined us today, thank you so much for being here and coming to listen to us wherever you are. I really appreciate your support, and it's almost blown me away today to think about the fact that we have finally got to the finish line of what was a very ambitious initial project. And yeah, it's wonderful to think about what we've achieved and what we can do now that we've been refunded. So thank you so much to Minister Foley for your support. At the outset, I really wanted to acknowledge and thank my former colleague, Lloyd Murphy, who used to work at St Kilda and is now works over at Inner Melbourne Community Legal, who initially put together the grant application and really conceived of the project with Garth Parkhill, who was the former team leader of the alcohol and other drugs team at Thorne Harbour Health. This is really the brainchild of those two great minds. So I'd like to thank and acknowledge you both for, coming up with the idea and allowing me to take this job. So when I started 2 years ago now at the LGBTIQ Legal Service, it really just was a theoretical concept. It was my job to set up a new health justice partnership with Thorne Harbour Health, or as it was then known, the Victorian AIDS Council. And when we first started, to be honest, I didn't know heaps about the St Kilda area, being a Westie myself, and I didn't know heaps about the lived experience of the queer LGBTIQ communities that have traditionally lived in the south side of Melbourne. So it's been a real honour and a real treat getting to know some of the people in the area and getting to understand the history of the area. There's such a rich history that I've loved learning and continue to learn. When I started in the role, I had also recently started transitioning as part of my gender affirming healthcare, and I had been working in the anti-discrimination team at Victorian Legal Aid. So I had a very good grounding in discrimination law from my training in the equality law team, and also my lived experiences, a person with my own healthcare needs that sometimes weren't met in the way that I had hoped in Victoria. So it was a challenging experience starting the role at that time, and it was in many ways quite nerve-wracking to enter a new space in a time of personal change for me. But I decided to, do my best to throw myself into the challenge of building up the LGBTIQ legal service and to learn as much as I can from our health justice partner, Thorne Harbour Health, which I will tell you plenty about. But I just learnt so much about the different communities that come under the LGBTIQ banner. And I think if there's one thing that I've learned, if you take away one thing from this report, it's that we are so many different communities. We live in different areas. We have different legal needs. We have different health needs. We don't always agree on a lot of things. And so it's very, very important for us, while we need to be united, we also need to acknowledge and celebrate our differences as well and have a tailored approach to different parts of the community, which I think is my number one takeaway from these 2 years. I wanted to just go through some of the things that I learned, which will hopefully be something that you can read about in the report when you download it. So just a couple of the legal issues that absolutely struck me that I honestly didn't know a lot about when I started in the job was the discrimination that HIV positive international students and other migrants still receive when they're having their visas processed by the Australian government. And the fact that people who are HIV positive who want to live or reside here have to still fight to show that they won't be a burden on our community, you know, frankly, blew me away in terms of the ongoing discrimination. And it was a wonderful opportunity for me to work with people like Jonathan Meddings at Thorne Harbour Health to talk about what we could actually do to change those kind of policies. So I was immensely grateful for the support of Jonathan in getting my head around what was quite a difficult and thorny issue, and all of the work that social workers at hospitals like the Alfred continue to do to refer people in who are having that experience, and may just becoming aware that they're HIV positive at the same time that they're becoming aware that this might have a really difficult implication for their visa. So a very difficult legal issue that I was, you know, proud to do my bit to work on, and it remains a huge area of unmet legal need. Family violence was another huge area of legal need over the 2 years, and again, working hand in hand with the family violence team at Thorne Harbour Health made what could have been an utterly overwhelming task much more manageable, working with them to help get clients support letters and get them referred into Thorne Harbour Health projects like the Revisioning LGBTI Men's Behaviour Change program. Sorry, my cat's just knocked something over in the corner. Was incredibly helpful, and it just demonstrated the power of working in partnership with other communities. I was surprised by how many same-sex attracted women or women who identified as lesbians talked about the discrimination that they still received when going to a police station and reporting family violence, and them feeling that the police officers were simply not taking their experience as family violence as seriously because it was to women, for example. And this is the kind of everyday discrimination on top of a legal problem that somebody is already having that we really need to work on as a community to change. Remaining on the topic of family violence, I was contacted by so many people over the last 2 years who were parents or caregivers of trans or gender diverse or gender questioning young people who were going through very difficult parenting disputes within the family courts, applying for intervention orders, and not only dealing with some really difficult interpersonal issues within their own relationships and communities, but also having to educate their own lawyers at some times about trans and gender diverse issues and why their children's right to choose their own identity should be respected. So it was fantastic to work with a bunch of pro bono law firms in referring these kind of people for what was, you know, at times a really dedicated need for assistance that these people need. And again, that remains an area of need, and Fitzroy Legal Service continue to do a fantastic job of providing LGBTIQ family violence and family law advice, and it's just so vital. And I've learnt so much from my colleagues at Fitzroy Legal Service as well. So thank you for being so collegiate over the last 2 years, whether it be doing midsummer surveys together or just having a chat about something that I knew nothing about. They've just been an absolute joy to work with. And I think that's when we're doing our best as a sector, when we're seeing ourselves as, you know, a connected part of a broader legal assistance project and not a siloed bubble. So many people from across Victoria, particularly in the regions, contacted our service. And I was, again, quite stunned by how much discrimination and street-based harassment LGBTIQ people in regional areas of Victoria can still face. And I suppose the complexity of them having to rely on sometimes very limited services, whether that be healthcare or whether it's them interacting with a particular Corrections Victoria branch and there's no other place for any of them to go, it just makes inclusive practice within all of those organisations so much more important. So it continues to be a real focus that we need to work with people who are living in parts of Victoria that are further away. And in some ways, I suppose the challenge of COVID-19 has also thrown up an opportunity for us to be, because we're all online all of the time, there's no reason why we can't focus more on different parts of the outer regions of Victoria. Speaking of the outer regions of Victoria, I also learned so much about the lived experience of trans and gender diverse prisoners, some of whom are still in prisons that don't align with their gender identity, and their ongoing battles to obtain hormone replacement therapy while in custody, some waiting over 2.5 years for a first appointment. So I think we can all agree that work still needs to be done in that space, and I'm hoping that positive change can be achieved soon. I understand that there's some policies being redeveloped at the moment, and hopefully our most vulnerable parts of the community can be included in the next government strategy in relation to LGBTIQ whole of government. So I think that's an exciting opportunity for us to make some meaningful change. I also wanted to acknowledge that this project has not just taught me about the law, but also taught me about the practice of being a lawyer. I know that there'll be some lawyers on the call today who have done their own health justice partnerships or participated in them. And it's just an amazing experience. You learn so much from working with different professionals, whether it be the IHEAL peer support workers who did family violence peer support work, or the drug and alcohol AOD team workers that have just a different way of doing things. I learnt so much from working in partnership with them, and really mimicked so much of the excellent work they do in terms of creating a respectful and safe and caring environment for people to share their stories, particularly people who have experienced complex trauma. And that's something that I will take away from this experience and continue to work on. So I am so grateful to my colleagues at Thorne Harbour Health for demonstrating best practice in that space for me. I learned so much about the history of St Kilda as well, and the long history of St Kilda Legal Service providing support to the LGBTIQ community and also the sex worker community. And there's often a great deal of intersection between those two identities and occupations. And it's been an absolute honour working with the sex worker community in Victoria, and hearing from Vixen Collective and learning how to be a better ally to sex workers. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I am hopeful that we will see decriminalisation in Victoria soon, and look forward to reading everybody's submissions in relation to the decriminalisation that's going on at the moment. I'm so grateful to my colleagues broadly in the community legal sector who, since day one, even though it wasn't necessarily something that we were planning on doing, were just clamouring for LGBTIQ inclusive practice training. As Lynn and Annie mentioned, we had the job of creating an inclusive practice toolkit, but even before I managed to write the first word of the toolkit, I had organisations like West Justice, the Federation of Community Legal Centres, and our peak body asking for training so that they too could provide respectful legal services to LGBTIQ people in their own areas of Victoria. And that's just so important, because a specialist service can never serve the thousands and thousands of LGBTIQ people that need free or low-cost legal support. And it's been an absolute honour to go into services like West Justice and like Eastern Community Legal Centre and get the opportunity to try and impart what little I know about inclusive practice, and put names to faces so that we can continue to kind of provide meaningful referrals. So it's been really wonderful, and greatly appreciated people's interest in that as well. And of course, the support of the state government and the City of Melbourne allowed us to go from what was originally a very lonely job as me as the only LGBTIQ outreach lawyer to a whole team of people. So we've got Sarah Jo, who you've seen today, who's our admin and volunteer manager and project officer extraordinaire. We've got Hannah, who'll talk in a moment, who's done the lion's share of work on this report today. And of course, my colleagues Alex and Nathan, who have both come on board as LGBTIQ community lawyers and have just, you know, absolutely smashed it. It's not easy doing this work, and I really do want to acknowledge that, being part of the community that you're also providing legal services to can provide additional challenges. It's emotionally draining at times. It can be triggering work, and having a team that's really gotten around me and supported me and has supported each other has just meant so much to me, particularly while we've been going through quite an uncertain time in so many ways. So thank you to all of you, and I would encourage anybody who's considering doing a project at this time, you know, teamwork is definitely the way to go. Allowing different people with different lived experiences into the team and having their insights has just been absolutely crucial to us working to provide a more inclusive service. I also wanted to acknowledge, of course, the work of both my former principal solicitor, Agata Verbowski, and now Annie Davis. The two of them have been such supporters of the LGBTIQ legal service. It's gone from being, you know, one little kind of extra job as part of the overall St Kilda Legal Service team to a really big part of the overall St Kilda Legal Service project. And I'm so grateful to the work that they've done within our organisation to try and make St Kilda Legal Service a more inclusive workplace itself. I was really grateful to St Kilda Legal Service to, for example, provide me with some transition leave so that I could take some time off to obtain gender-affirming healthcare myself. This is the kind of thing that happens when you start a project like this with people of members of the LGBTIQ community. It changes the organisation itself. And, you know, Agata and now Annie have done a great job of being supportive of me as a staff member with some additional needs in some ways, and has done everything they could to champion our work to the broader community. So it's just been fantastic. And for anybody who hasn't looked at our LGBTIQ inclusive practice toolkit yet, you can find it on our website now. And if you do want to, you know, do things like implement a transition leave clause in your own either collective agreement or policies at work, you can just download it off our website and copy it. That's what it's there for. And that's the kind of change that we want to see in the whole legal sector, because this isn't just about changing the legal outcomes for the LGBTIQ community. It's about changing the legal profession as well to make sure that the LGBTIQ community and its staff can be respected and included, which will also improve the outcomes for our clients, because so many LGBTIQ people have had really bad experiences, both with courts, with the police, and unfortunately with lawyers who just haven't understood the complexities of their own experience, may have held discriminatory views, or just simply asked questions that they didn't realise were hurtful or intrusive. So there's so much work still to be done. So I suppose in closing, for the people that read this report, I really do hope you find it useful as a conversation starter, and I hope that it does plenty to inspire new projects and new reports. As you'll see when reading it, I think we acknowledge about 25 times in there, this is not a comprehensive report of our whole community's experience. It couldn't be. This is our project report of one particular project that we've done with some very limited resources, and where we weren't able to meet the legal need of particular areas of the legal community because we didn't either have all of the partnerships, we didn't know all of the people, or simply didn't have the staff to go out to the particular areas where those clients were living or working. So there's so much work to be done, but hopefully this report will highlight some of the communities that absolutely deserve an organisation's absolute focus. And I hope that it also shines a light on the important areas of law reform that's still needed, whether that be around changes to the Equal Opportunity Act, as Martin mentioned, the looming threat of the Religious Discrimination Bill, which I certainly hope will not come into law, given the extreme levels of healthcare discrimination that some people have already reported to the LGBTIQ Legal Service. It's just an additional thing we really don't need. And I hope that this report can inspire new partnerships and new connections, both with the LGBTIQ Legal Service and with other organisations. So if there is anybody in the audience today that thinks, wow, you know, I'd love to partner with this service to produce a new report or work on a fact sheet to try and help a particular part of the community, do let us know. We don't know everything, and we really, really want to provide a meaningful support to different parts of the community, and we know oh so well that we don't have all the answers. So please, please do get in touch. And if there are projects that your organisations are doing that we can champion, we would absolutely love to do that. So given that you've come and listened to us today, we would love to come and to listen to you and hear about what you're doing and what we can do to help. So thanks so much for listening and dealing with my menacing kitten. And I will hand over now to my colleague, Hannah Sycamore, who, as I mentioned, has really done the lion's share of the work in putting this final report together. So thank you, Hannah, and would love to hear any more thoughts that you have on what it was like putting this report together, or key things that stand out for you.
Thank you so much, Sam. And I just want to acknowledge this project has really been led by Sam Alkin and started with $110,000 and big ideas and dreams and a whole lot of heart and grit and determination, and has turned into a project with 5 staff members, part-time staff members. And we've been able to deliver this report with, as Sam has described, pretty limited resources. And an ambitious project. So it started as an analysis of legal need for the whole LGBTIQ community. And what we realised in putting it together is that each community is so different and so specific and has unique issues and requires a specific legal response. So the report really goes through different communities that intersect with LGBTIQ plus communities, but it can't be an exhaustive list of all of these communities and a description of everything. But we really do hope that it is a starting point and starts a conversation and encourages future partnerships and future projects. And as Sam has said, we're really keen to develop more partnerships, and you would have heard about the Roberta Perkins Law Project, a partnership between Transgender Victoria and St Kilda Legal Service. That can be used as a blueprint for future partnerships, and what we'd really like this report to encourage is a better service in the future, a permanent service and an expanded service that includes areas that are not currently being serviced, like immigration law and like family law, with specialist LGBTIQ knowledge, staffed by LGBTIQ lawyers and in partnership with community groups, community leaders, and advocacy organisations. So there's been so many people and individuals and groups who have contributed to this report. Thank you so much. I've never worked on a project before where I've had markups sent back to me with emojis and messages of encouragement. And wow, I loved this point that you've made So there was this real feeling of support within the people that read the report that was really heartening, and it was particularly poignant but also difficult putting together the report during the COVID-19 restrictions. And Equality Australia has done a great report which you can look up around how COVID-19 has impacted particular LGBTIQ communities. But some examples include particularly affected by losing casual employment, particularly affected by unstable housing, increasing the risk of homelessness and poverty. Over-policing has been a big problem in particular communities, and we know that over-policing is intersects with race, and we've seen what's happened in social housing in Melbourne and still is happening now, the problems around over-policing. That leads me to my next point, which is that an LGBTIQ legal service can't exist in a vacuum of providing legal help on particularly discrete legal issues. It, at its essence, needs to agitate for a fairer system. So what we've seen the service do is provide submissions on the legal discrimination bills, the vilification inquiry, and plenty more, the Royal Commission into mental health. And that service led by Sam is trying to agitate for a fairer system. We know that we can't just look at LGBTIQ as an all-encompassing term, that each group is so distinct, and we need to partner with community groups and allow them to lead the narrative and lead the goals and be a part of the decision making. So when we talk about partnerships, this is what we hope to achieve. So the report talks about recommendations for what a future service might look like, and it talks about a paid steering committee of multidisciplinary members of diverse community groups. Too often these conversations are led by lawyers, by public servants and policy makers, and we need to include not just community members with lived experience, but diverse multidisciplinary experiences, and the more voices and the more people that we can include, the more representative we will be in impacting change and making the system fairer for everybody. So part of that, as Sam's already talked about with the development of the toolkit for community legal centre lawyers, have a look at that toolkit. Even if you're not a community lawyer, it includes a transition leave policy, which is excellent and can be used in any organisation. So that toolkit and other law reform efforts and other training we recommend for corrections, for the courts, for the police. We know that LGBTIQ people have a long history of police brutality and over-policing, and we think that a specialised peak LGBTIQ legal service is the best place for consistent training to be developed and shared, and to continue that sharing of knowledge between the LGBTIQ legal service providers that are already doing that work and servicing those communities, other private practitioners, Victorian Legal Aid, and all organisations involved in justice. And we can't just be helping people with their legal problems. As I've already said, we really need to contribute to making the system fairer for everyone. And we know that, for example, in the trans and gender diverse community, that people need jobs, stable housing, gender affirming healthcare, mental health care in order to be more equal and in this community, to be included properly and for the community to represent and be fair for everyone. So we need to talk about housing, we need to talk about abolition, we need to talk about keeping people out of prisons, not just how the prisons can, be safe when you're in there. We need to think about the bigger picture. So I think what's clear listening to me talk is that this report has really highlighted there's a lot of issues and a lot that needs to be changed and a lot that we have to do. So we're really excited with all the people that are interested in this project. We're really excited to work together. And we're really hoping to deliver on these recommendations and continue to receive the amazing support from the state government so that the service can be permanent and ongoing and expanded to properly address legal need in the communities that we've discussed in the report. So thanks so much for coming and for everyone that has been a part of this and will continue to be a part of it.
Thank you, Hannah. Next, I'll invite Simon Ruth to speak. So Simon is the CEO of Thorne Harbour Health, formerly the Victorian AIDS Council, and has just worked in this sphere for decades. Simon.
Thanks, Sarah Jo. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm on Boomerang Lane today, and also the boards of St Kilda Legal and Thorne Harbour who are present, Minister Foley, Lynn Hortain and Annie. And it struck me, Sam just made that comment about how much he learnt and looking at the different areas of legal need. And I guess when you work in this space for a long time, and I know a lot of people on the call today are staff who work in LGBTI services, we often get so used to what's going on and the discrimination that we and our clients face that we forget how outrageous it is. And it's not until we talk to somebody who isn't faced by that level of discrimination that it begins to hit us, the sorts of discrimination we face, and whether it's being misgendered or the issues that intersex communities face or the various other issues that we face as communities. We need to remember that it is pretty outrageous, a lot of the issues that we face. And that figure of 1/3 of people who filled out the survey had experienced a discrimination law issue is also very striking, because I think as LGBTI people, we all live with fear of discrimination every day, and every single one of us has at some point hidden or forgotten or not mentioned that we're LGBTI, because we just can't be bothered on that day wondering if we're going to be discriminated against by the stranger who's standing in front of us asking about our lives. So it's an incredibly important service, the LGBTIQ Legal Service. It meets an amazingly big need. I think at the start, we had no idea of the diversity of work that this team was going to do. It was originally a drug and alcohol project, and it's become much, much more than that. And I think we had no idea of the number of people that it would help and how it would grow and develop. So Thorne Harbour Health is incredibly proud of the service and of the report that's been developed. It's not that long ago in Victoria that we had laws criminalising our lives, and certainly those laws have existed in my lifetime and a number of people on this call's lifetime. And as you read through the report, you'll see many examples of where, although the laws have been improved or removed, there still remain a whole bunch of barriers in place that put our lives and our bodies and our lifestyles at odds with the system. Often systems designed for a cis and het world. When you add a layer of discrimination and prejudice to that, you begin to see a significant gap between our lives and the lives of the community that we sit within. And we see that with poorer health outcomes. We see it in difficulty proving the validity of our relationships, perceived mistreatment by authorities, discrimination in employment, and also the legislated right to discriminate against us based solely on who we are. And we see the federal government attempting to do more of that right now. Further intersectionality, of course, compounds that. And since our early days as the Victorian AIDS Council, we've always fought to challenge unfair systems and laws and environments. And when we rebranded to Thorne Harbour Health, we renamed ourselves after Alison Thorne, and Keith Harbour, who were two early leaders in our organisation who fought significant battles themselves. Alison was stood down from her job as a teacher when she came out publicly as a lesbian and had a landmark discrimination case that she was part of. And Keith Harbour, who was part of ACT UP, set up a buyers club to bring HIV medications into Australia when the systems weren't responsive enough to help save people's lives, and so he challenged that. And I guess with this service, not every LGBTI person wants or needs a peer-based service or an LGBTI-specific service, but many of us do, and at different times in our lives, we will want that more and we'll need it more. And whilst this report might signal the end of a project, it's the continuation of a process to dismantle the various laws and systems that continue to stand in our way. We're fortunate to be in Victoria, and as we have a government who's keen to do those things. It was mentioned that we have vilification protections legislation being looked at, conversion therapy bans, sex work law reform, a government that's about to undertake a whole LGBTIQ whole of government strategy. So the environment's right to do this work right now, and the funding by government of this service is indicative of that. But it's an amazing job that this service does, and it's got a critical role to play. And I'd like, on behalf of Thorne Harbour Health, I'd like to thank St Kilda Legal Service and the Victorian Law Foundation in partnering with us to achieve our vision of a healthy future for our sex, sexuality and gender diverse communities. Thanks.
I forgot to unmute myself, sorry. Thank you, Simon. Next up, we're going to have a brief panel discussion. We're sort of running over time. There is a chat function where people can write their questions. And so I want to also quickly introduce Son Vivian, who is the board secretary for Transgender Victoria. And I was going to introduce Nathan Jong, who's the another one of our outreach lawyers at LGBTIQ Legal Service, but they've dropped off. So hi Vivian, I just wanted to let you introduce yourself before we get into questions.
Okay, my name is Son Vivian. I work at Transgender Victoria as peer support coordinator. And also have a gig at Thorne Harbour Health, working in transgender wellbeing. Yeah, I guess in the peer support space, I see a lot of people talking about their exposure to legal inequity and the trauma and stress that are generated through that. So I guess that's why I'm here today. Thanks.
Sorry, Nathan wrote to me that the Zoom conked out. So Nathan, hello. Yeah, briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll have everyone else join the call.
So my name's Nathan. I'm one of the LGBTIQ outreach lawyers currently working alongside the rest of the team. Basically working 5 days from home, but yeah, still engaging with the community and doing the best that we can with what we've got in these troubling times. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sorry, it's the mute and unmute forever. So I think if everyone else can join in, I guess first, Nathan, like one of the things in the report is, so like one of our recommendations is around ways staff can be supported in the work they do. Like a lot of the work we do and similar work, like the workers at Thorne Harbour Health, can be very intense. And I guess I wanted to know what sort of key supports you think should be, and what were your experiences?
My mic on? Yeah. Well, a lot of the work that, a lot of the matters that come in through our intakes have involve family violence. Family violence work has made up a majority of the referrals that we get from Thorne Harbour Health, as well as self-referrals. And we're talking about helping someone who's in our community who's experiencing like sometimes extreme family violence, and then sort of experiencing like a transfer of like their trauma onto ourselves, and seeing how it relates to our own relationships. So some of the supports that we've received include debrief counselling sessions from Thorne Harbour Health, which has been great. So Thorne Harbour Health have graciously provided, their own counselling services to us as, health justice partners, just to debrief, make sure, it's important work that we do, but also making sure that we're taking care of ourselves just so we can provide the best service that we can to the rest of the community. Our own internal supports, again, it's a very supportive work environment. I've had lots of support from Sam Elkin, from you in terms of our intakes, also from Annie and the rest of the team. So I'd love to thank them for the support that they provide. It's a strong team effort to provide the service that we are with the resources that we have.
I also wanted to say,
Oh, no. I wanted to acknowledge too that Carolyn Gillespie as Director of Services from Thorne Harbour Health and not only have all the staff at Thorne Harbour Health provided so much support to our clients as a wraparound service, I feel like they've sort of wrapped around staff as well in the support that they've given. So really thank you for that. I can see another question, Sarah Jo, but you can trigger that one off.
Yeah, I also wanted to say a big shout out to Alex, who's our other lawyer in the team, who isn't here today. So Nat has asked, what has been the biggest challenge you faced preparing the report? I guess there's a whole COVID thing.
It's a good one for Hannah or Sam.
Yeah.
I think am I off mute? Yeah. One of the biggest challenges was trying to confine the scope of the report and acknowledging the limitations of its reach in terms of the data from our clients and from the participants in the Midsummer survey, and from our stakeholders as well, but the inability to analyse the legal need of every LGBTIQ community. And that's been a bit frustrating. I think the project was very ambitious from the start and extremely ambitious, and gets done a lot on limited resources. But kind of narrowing that scope, I think, has strengthened the integrity of the report, but was a difficult decision to make in scaling it back. And also just to, again, amplify what Nathan has said, during COVID-19, we've seen a spike in communities' mental health, and that's included our own, I think, experiences of COVID-19. Everyone that works in the legal service identifies as a member of the LGBTIQ community. I'm the president of Mallee Pride in Mildura, and seeing the way that our community, regional folks who have precarious access to gender affirming healthcare, to mental health care that's LGBTIQ specific, there's been the community's really been suffering, and writing about all of these things, a lot of our discussion around discrimination and poorer mental health outcomes, it's kind of a lot of sad news, and there is an issue with selling trauma and selling bad news in order to get funding. So begging for more money by talking about all of the bad news is quite traumatic, I think, for people, particularly when they identify as members of those communities. And that's really why part of the recommendations in the report is that the legal service is permanent.
Yeah, if I could just follow on from that, I think that, you know, one of the things that I love about being a community lawyer is, you know, the honour, and I do mean that. I don't mean that in a cliche way. I do consider it an honour when people share their stories with you, and you know, you get to learn about things that are really going on in the community, and you know, the unvarnished truth of people's real situations, and trying to you know, use that in a report to use somebody's experience when they're having, you know, a really bad day to describe that as like one kind of like legal issue. Like I find it as a practitioner, like I have very mixed feelings about these kind of reports, because I also really want to honour the resilience of our communities, and I think it's a story that hasn't been told enough. So I would love for a report like this to come out alongside a report saying, you know, these are all the ways in which people have, you know, self-soothed and self-advocated for themselves in every little which way. And I'm just reading Bianca's question in there that I might respond to in that, around, was there any consideration of non-legal forms of justice, and what would you like to see done in terms of non-legal avenues for justice? This is something that was much on my mind over the 2 years, particularly around LGBTIQ experiences of family violence and online bullying, harassment, that sort of pile-on issue, which, you know, can be a family violence issue. It can be a personal safety intervention order matter. It can be a defamation law matter. It's definitely a community matter, and I would love to see ways of us trying to address that issue in a more nuanced way, and try and, like, I'd love to create a resource, for example, that explains, you know, where people are crossing the line into something that's clearly illegal, and then what the avenues are. But if it's not clearly illegal, actually that still doesn't make it okay, and what community supports are there out there to put people in touch with each other so that these community conflicts can be resolved without it, you know, getting to the point where some people are completely at a wit's end and, you know, not wanting to go to the police because they don't want to deal with the police, but then not wanting to be completely excluded from their communities, which just seems to happen time and time again. And honestly, like, I referred a couple of people to like Undercurrent Victoria, for example, around family violence, around the opportunities to kind of mediate as a community. And because, you know, as a lawyer, you kind of don't get to see what happens once you send something off. Like, I would love to know more about alternative ways of resolving intercommunity conflict, because, you know, as I'm sure everybody on the call will agree emphatically, like, the law is the last place you want to be most of the time. We don't want to get people litigating or, you know, involved with the law if they don't have to be. And I would love for some research to be done on the best practice around resolving stuff within the community. And it's stuff that I want to be educated on very much.
Yeah. I can see you nodding emphatically and writing things down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to throw to you in, like, as someone who, you know, isn't a lawyer, it can be hard sometimes to think about non-legal avenues if you're sort of stuck in that legal sphere.
And just following on from what Sam was saying, and Sam's in fact involved in one of our peer support groups under the Spark initiative, which is, you know, supporting TGD people to support one another around these things. And it just kind of, again, brings you back to that place of, unless you know that you have rights to actually complain about, then you're trapped in that circle of how to advocate and how to actually affirm yourself in amorphous spaces that are really hard to define. And, you know, the line between family violence or domestic violence and domestic hostility and lateral hostility and the kind of nuanced things that are accumulate over periods of time and have significant impact are really hard to affirm in legal contexts, whereas in some of those I guess more social kind of peer support spaces, that capacity to collectively gain some sort of strength, some resilience, some ideas around rights and responsibilities. In fact, when is it actually not okay to constructively critique people in online forums, and how does that contribute to lateral hostility? So I think that that's a role for peer support, and look, we're very lucky in Victoria, and Thorne Harbour Health is a big part of this as well, to have resources to have people like me employed to actually help facilitate what can otherwise be quite hard to get going when it's coming from grassroots and relies on individuals' momentum when they're already often stigmatised, discriminated against, and dealing with trauma. Sorry about the whining in the background. I don't have a child in a cage. It's a dog who's having separation anxiety because they normally have unlimited access to everything.
You must let me in that room.
Yeah, well, if she does, she's going to maul me because it's walk time.
Yeah. Ivan has asked, where are the key research gaps based on the next steps for the LGBTI communities in Victoria? And I wanted to get Lynn's ideas, because you did say you're doing a lot of legal needs research at the moment.
Thanks, Sarah Jo. I think I will pass directly to Sam and Hannah for further insights in terms of the research gaps that they've identified. But just to give you some broader context, we are about to undertake, well, we've sort of started the development of a very significant piece of research, which will be Victoria-wide, looking not only at legal need, and a lot of the comments that have been made by various people today go to the import of that, and I'm particularly interested in Sam's perspective around, not only what is the legal need, but what is the legal resilience, if you like, legal and non-legal responses to legal problems, because that's another part of the research that we're about to undertake, which is what we call public understanding of law. So what problems have people identified, whether or not they identify them as legal or not, and how have they dealt with them? And that from that, I think you get a fuller picture, not only of the legal need as it percolates, but also in how people have dealt with that and what their stories are and what the legal resilience is, if you like, across the community. So that's a really significant piece of work that'll take us about 3 years. But that show is just about to get on the road. And without any insight in particular to the LGBTIQ community, I think Sam and Hannah would be much better placed to talk about what the specific interests are in terms of research in that community. But we certainly look forward to identifying some of those issues as they emerge through our broader research.
Well, there is one report that I'm keenly looking forward to reading. The International College Commission of Jurists Victoria and Transgender Victoria and Dugan something lawyers are currently doing a report into the experiences of trans and gender diverse people interacting with the criminal justice system. This is something that we've helped some of our clients who are currently incarcerated complete surveys as part of that research. And I know that's gone out to not just trans and gender diverse people, but also criminal law practitioners, both barristers and solicitor advocates, about the experiences of discrimination and different sentencing and so on. So I'm really interested to look at that, because I believe that my community is fundamentally discriminated against within the criminal justice system, and I would like some evidence to back that up so that it's not me just sounding paranoid. So that's something that's already underway that I'm really looking forward to. I think that LGBTIQ and trans and gender diverse experiences within the family law system would be really interesting. That's something I'd like to see. And yeah, I mean, just kind of everything. Like, I mean, more research in LGBTIQ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander First Nation communities would be incredibly valuable. This is like our project. I don't think that we did a particularly good job of serving our First Nations community, and like I would like to know why, and I'd like to know what we could do better. So research in that space would be incredibly helpful.
Sam, we've just had a request to repeat who was doing that research. I think Dugan O'Brien, sounds like maybe that's the firm. And
I'll put it in the chat now. I'll find it.
And I think just following on from what Sam was saying about the need for more First Nations research, that, you know, there needs to be more money and focus on First Nations led research projects so that we can get a better sense of how issues of race, sexuality and gender all, you know, intersect and affect people in particular ways. But I also think that a lot of this research we've already done and we've been talking about for a long time, and the next step is to agitate for, you know, better partnerships and more power to be put into the hands of particular communities, so that they can lead the narrative and lead the change and lead decision making in their own communities and be part of changing the system. To be fair, I think that a lot of this research already exists and we're in an implementation stage.
Thanks, Hannah. And I can see a question that's suggested it could be a good one for you or for Son, and I think Simon would definitely have some guidance on this question. Along the lines of multidisciplinary or non-legal sectors, how can the law, especially the LGBTIQ legal service, make better relationships with governance, planning and design of spaces?
I think partnerships, and to make sure that our service is responsive and listens to the needs of those particular communities. And as I said earlier, not just lawyers and public servants, but people from different disciplines, including design. I think that Sam and the legal service has demonstrated enormous flexibility and ambition in different areas of law reform, policy reform and change generally. And if there are people that have ideas of reform or partnerships, I certainly encourage you to get in touch with the LGBTIQ Legal Service. The more people that we can have involved, the more ideas, the more participation, the more representative and effective the service will be.
I think the thing I'd say on that one is community consultation and really meaningful engagement at community grassroots levels can really inform ideas of governance, planning and design of spaces. Simona and I have had interesting discussions around the difference between safe spaces and safer or safe-ish spaces, because, you know, we really can't guarantee that something is one size fits all safe under any circumstances. But I think the call is there for agencies and orgs, and as we're designing spaces or designing surveys or induction forms, to really think about who fits within the boxes or the structures that we're offering, and who's excluded by definition of the parameters of that box. So, you know, bathroom spaces are the obvious go-to there as an illustration of, you know, where does the non-binary person go if there's only male and female options available? And unless you ask communities, you don't know necessarily that there are people who don't fit the existing structures. Yeah.
Simon, do you have any comments on that? I think the question kind of spanned governance, planning and design of spaces.
I guess really, you know, just articulating need and articulating difference when asked about the research gaps, we know a fair bit about gay men in our community, but it's all through the lens of HIV. We know a reasonable amount about trans people, but generally when we say that, we mean trans men and trans women. We don't mean non-binary and agender communities. And everybody else we know very little about. And then we get funded to do LGBTIQ research, which doesn't really keep anyone happy. Everybody's saying that they don't get adequately represented in it and they don't feel it quite meets their needs. And as Sam said, we are hundreds of communities where we're not one community. And so anything we can do to better articulate what are the needs of the various parts of our community so that organisations like mine, who say we're LGBTI, we can do a better job of meeting everyone's community needs. And I think the legal service has a key role to play in that.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of like intersex clients come to the service, and I think that's one of the communities that doesn't get a lot of representation and I guess space in the LGBTIQ plus communities sphere. And we had some really great constructive feedback on our toolkit from Intersex Human Rights Australia, and it's just great the way that the LGBTIQ community and the service and other organisations are able to correct each other and support each other and make things better. It's important. You should always be doing this. Yeah. We are kind of running over time. We were meant to finish up at 4:30, but yeah, it's 4:36. I'm just browsing to see if there are any more questions. Sam has popped in to the chat a link to the survey they were talking about that Transgender Victoria is doing with the Dugan George defence lawyers and the International Commission of Jurists, their Victorian office. Is that survey still open? Yeah, so people can visit that. Also on our website, you can view the report as well as the Inclusive Practice Toolkit we put together and released. That should also be available on the Eventbrite online page. Yeah. Any last comments or questions? Annie? Nathan?
No, unless we can see any more questions pop up, but just to once again say an enormous thank you to everyone who's attended today, and to the Victoria Law Foundation for hosting this event, the lovely Matt Hurst as well, who's been in the engine room, as well as Sarah Jo in making sure everything happens. I think I had a moment, Sarah Jo, where I thought you might have dropped off and panicked because you're the only one who seems to be able to drive this thing from our staff team. So thank you so much for comparing and coordinating us today. Thanks to Martin, Lynn, Simon, Sam, Hannah, for speaking today. Some thank yous that I think I neglected to mention earlier were to Hothouse Media, who've been fantastic in working with us in some of our media efforts over the past couple of months, and to the St Kilda Legal Service Board, who are sort of showing up in force, I can see on the attendee list, just for your huge support. It's been such a journey for St Kilda Legal Service and transformational for us, and just such an exciting and fulfilling work that we do. And for our partnership with Thorne Harbour Health, once again, this legal service is, would not have been possible without this partnership, and we've learned so much, and we're really excited to see with this additional funding what more this service can do over the next couple of years. It's really, really exciting. So thank you all, and we will wrap it up there. And then please do check out our website as well for all these resources in this wonderful report, and please do all stay in touch, and we hope to have more events like this and engage with you more as the service grows and develops in future.
Wonderful, thank you. A recording will be made available. I'm just really slow at getting it up. yeah, a final thank you to everyone who attended, the Victoria Law Foundation, Transgender Victoria, all our lovely team members, yeah, a big thank you to everyone and our Auslan interpreters as well. Sorry, I almost forgot you. How rude. You've done an amazing job. Thank you so much for attending, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.